Welcome to another 12 at 12. I'm getting started a little bit late. I've been fiddling around with my camera here, but our topic is a really important one, and that has to do with the experience of feeling alone and the longing for a sense of belonging. These two experiences and the way we think about them are frequently complicated and confused in our culture. And so we're going to take a quick look at how to think about both of these things very differently. To get started, I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath, let your eyes close, and let's get settled into ourselves before we explore a new way of being. So whatever you're in the middle of, you can set it down. Whatever worry, whatever work, whatever busyness, whatever surfing you're doing on the internet, just close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose, the biggest breath you can manage. Hold it a moment. Feel the tension in the breath that you are holding, and then imagine that you can just let it go. All that you need and want to release from your life to be more present and more balanced. We're going to do that again. Another big breath in. I'm going to invite you to hold it, keeping your eyes closed. Release it as long and fully as you can. Feel yourself slowing down and settling down. Feel the muscles in your face relax. Feel the contentment of the moment. And while you're in this restful pose, I'd like to share a translation of an old Pawnee native song, an indigenous song from what is now the United States. Remember the circle of the sky, the stars and the eagle, the supernatural winds breathing night and day from the four directions. Remember the great life of the sun breathing on the earth. It lies upon the earth to bring out life upon the earth, life covering the earth. Remember the sacredness of things, running streams and dwellings, the young within the nest, a hearth for sacred fire, the holy flame of fire. It's as natural as breath, and it's as natural as anything else that we experience or that we do. The desire to belong, the innate longing for a sense of community and connection. And this comes from the fact that we originate in an experience of connection. The spirit itself, consciousness, the soul, merged with all life, with our origin, source, God, energy, whatever you call it. And then we come into the body of our mother, and we live for months, really for a year, 9 months inside, and the early months outside as one being with another. And then the entire process of maturation of a young human is built on interrelationship, interconnection, knowing ourselves through others, watching others, following others. And it unfolds through life, each stage, on to adolescence, into young adulthood, and so on, exploring and meeting different forms of belonging, connection, and community. But at some point, the conditioning of our culture takes over our assumptions about connection, how we look for connection, where we look for connection, and how we define and believe in what it means to belong. And as this becomes distorted, as this becomes more externalized, then it becomes more difficult to feel satisfied by the belonging that we find. So right now, when I'm recording this live, in the world today, it feels like there is as much, and maybe in some ways more division than ever. Here in the United States, we find political factions more divided than any recent memory. We find social factions divided by ideas about health and pandemics and safety and education, racial justice, social justice, gender equality. Now, the challenge that we find is that whatever side or camp we take, if we think, if we believe, if we've been trained to feel that other people being like us is a confirmation that we are right, or we are lovable, or we are worthwhile, then we will define a sense of belonging based on approval, based on sameness, and based on differentiation from the other. And that is remarkably dangerous. It's dangerous in two critical ways. First, when we feel better about ourselves by making other people wrong or making their differences scary or undesirable or unuseful, then we set ourselves up for a greater experience of fear, of isolation, and we cut ourselves off from the very nature of life itself, which is diversity. In the natural world, biodiversity is the core ingredient of sustainability. The cooperative model is the core engine of evolution. Competition and uniform systems are short-lived patterns that never, ever endure. Whether we look at a monocrop on a farm or whether we look at racial dominance, singularity of culture or race or ideology leads to disaster again and again and again. Now, we might say, well, that's obvious, and that's why I'm against those people who think like that and want that. But you see, even the belonging that we feel by opposing racism, division, and sexism can be an illusion in itself. We go to spiritual communities, social groups, humanitarian groups, political groups. We seek belonging for something more than the good of the world, but for the validation of the self. And we're all together because we're not like them. We're not like those guys. But then what happens inside our communities? Our churches, our Buddhist sanghas, our sweat lodge communities, our synagogues, our schools, our democratic rallies, all of these wonderful, important supports for the inner world, well, we find division again. I wanted to volunteer, but they don't like my ideas. I wanted to attend the event, but people aren't attending the way I like to attend. I like the teacher, but then I question whether the teacher really sees me or lives like me. When belonging is believed to be validated or assured based on sameness or unconditional approval, then we run into a real problem. And you know what we start to feel is alone. We start to feel more and more alone. And then, ironically, more and more invigorated to find more narrow communities that we fit more narrowly into, and the need to define the divide gets even bigger. The need to make the other even more fearful or wrong gets even greater. And the whole thing is an illusion. Because the feeling of aloneness and the feeling of belonging are both remedied by the same thing, which is to move our search for connection, meaning, identity, validation, and power from the outside in. And when I say in, I don't mean just into ourselves to be authentic, to be true to yourself. Certainly, those are core aspects of a sense of belonging in the family of life. But ultimately, those who feel an abiding sense of belonging in the world, those who never feel alone, are those who discover the presence of spirit and all life inside them. And then when they see people in camps or teams against them, they don't feel separateness. They feel sadness that my family feels this divide. They don't see the world divided by groups, by ideologies. They see one family. They see one magnificent mosaic of life, and they feel sorrow, grief, confusion, sometimes pain for what happens inside that family. But when your life journey is about placing a relationship to life itself, spirit, first, as the center of your being, the center of your day, the center of your relationships, ironically, it displaces all the belonging you ever wanted. It displaces all the people that you ever valued. It displaces all the connection that you ever pursued. When you put God first, everything else is pushed aside. And when that relationship matures and deepens, and you discover that God is not playing the games that people play, that God is not a being that belongs to some and not others, that God doesn't leave you alone, that God is our source, our substance, the very thing that fills the empty space around us, that holds our universe, that precedes and follows all things, that is literally the subtle spirit of life that animates our body. When we understand that that is what we are in first relationship to, then we know that every breath unites us with life, with other people, other creatures, with the plant world. We know that every mouthful of food, every drink of water is a communion with the family of life. We know that we are never alone. And then when we enter into groups, community, family, friendship, relationship, when spirit sits at the center of our identity, our being, our relationship, then those relationships become enriched because we see all those in our groups, all those in our family, all those in our relationships as a reflection of us, as a reflection of life, and as a reflection of our most sacred origin. Call it what you like. And so we take a new attitude. We're curious. We're compassionate. We're creative. And we're contemplative, which means we don't jump to conclusion. It means we listen to intuition. We return to stillness. And we seek a greater evolution in all we do, in all we relate to, because that is the impulse of life. That is the nature of our source, our sacred origin. It is the unity of our life through the diversity of all that is living. So it's something to think about, and I hope it's helpful. I'll see you soon. Again, it's Dr. Jonathan Ellerby. You can go to my website, jonathanellerby.com. You can download my book, Spiritual Experience, totally free, no strings attached. You don't even have to put in an email, but I would appreciate it if you can subscribe to my YouTube page. It'll help me work out the glitches with this camera sooner than later. And take care. Be well.